to welcome a great friend, a tremendous policymaker, someone who provides leadership on all the issues and the policies that we care about as the broadband industry. And we couldn't have a better friend. And so I want to recognize Senator Ben Ray Lujan, New Mexico. Beautiful state. Welcome.
Well, I appreciate that, Chip. Well, everyone, it's good to see you all. And I was complimenting Chip and INCOMPAS for the incredible lineup that they had today. And not just for everyone gathered here in this room, but people that are watching all across the country as well, that are interested in such an important topic. We all remember the days, or at least a few of us, I'm looking around this room, I don't know how many of you, but when the landline was maybe the only game in town, or maybe you all carried a little box on your hip that people would come up with creative ways to use numbered characters to try to send you a message for you to give them a call whenever you found a payphone that you might be lucky enough to have I don't know, by the time I was older, when they went away, it was 50 cents, not a quarter anymore, Chip. Yes. But I remember when I was a kid, there were a few dimes is all you needed as well. But it's incredible how quickly from the 1996 Act, everything has changed. And to where we are today, having conversations about AI and better uses of spectrum and allocation, trying to connect every trying to connect every home and every business in America, being smart about how we're going to get that done. And by the way, taking into consideration how to make it affordable for people to get connected, not just ensuring that they have a hard line to their homes. It's quite incredible. So I think it's a fun time to be in this space and a perfect time for this conversation, Chip.
No, and you know, we're in the midst of this historic federal funding to connect every American. You've been a tremendous leader in that effort. INCOMPAS, you got to see Mignon Clyburn, former chairwoman and commissioner of the FCC. She and I have been running the broadband campaign the last 3 years. How do you not only have the funding to connect everyone, but how do you also remove the barriers to deployment? Talk a little bit, to everyone about how you see BEAD, the implementation, the challenge process, how New Mexico is doing, any key principles at this stage of the implementation of the Act.
Well, the one thing that I appreciate that's happening in concert with BEAD is having maps that tell you where you need to put a little more attention and where you maybe had some success. What I'm referring to is that the maps that Congress worked on to ensure that the FCC would be updating them and they'd be the go-to source. They have to be updated every 6 months. And I think that's a smart way to look at connectivity data reporting, ensuring that state offices have to be more in touch with what's happening on the ground in their communities. And also empowering what the FCC created with that app originally, where folks could weigh in and say, no, these are the speeds in my house, or I don't have connectivity here, and you're updating as a consumer as well. I know I use that app. When I saw the speeds that were at my mother's house and I was there, and that was not the case, and so I jumped on the app, and my public comment as a citizen, I guess, not as a senator, was entered that way. Now, New Mexico, we're one of the fortunate states that has a state office as well that is working together, submitting everything on time. And I think that's helping us with BEAD allocation. But it doesn't mean that we should watch closely. We should ensure that we're going to connect every home, that we're looking at folks that are not connected or folks that have the slowest speeds, that we prioritize on getting this done and we maximize the BEAD funding. So all eyes are on this, as you know, Chip. I know you and I have had a lot of conversations about this as well, the FCC, but also Congress. Congress is very interested within the Energy and Commerce Committee and the Commerce Committee in the Senate as well.
As we think through BEAD, NTIA, Alan Davidson was here earlier today, gave good, relevant, timely remarks. But he's been a leader on the Tribal Connectivity Program, and he cited that, was very proud of the NTIA's achievement. Talk a little bit about why that's important to New Mexico. In my home state, my former home district, we have the Mississippi Band of Choctaws. Why is the Tribal Connectivity Program so important?
Well, one of the strengths of this important program in the country is truly partnering with tribal leaders, with Pueblo leaders to identify needs and gaps that exist. And rather than funding going for just connectivity, it's empowering the tribes to make decisions on owning their own spectrum, how they're going to lay networks. And one thing that happened in New Mexico, the Kimball, who is this extraordinary leader that was working with Pueblos along I-25. So if you've landed at the airport in Albuquerque and you're driving up to get to Santa Fe, you're driven by several reservations that are part of this specific program that I'm talking about. And what Kimball said, in better understanding the needs that existed at these Pueblos, was identifying that the best connectivity they had was at the libraries. Well, how did that happen? It was all through E-rate. There was very little connectivity elsewhere. There was a concern with easements, things of that nature. And so rather than trying to bring someone else in to go through the permitting process, which would take decades, they said, let's build our own network and we're going to connect right to the hop. And so they had 3 Pueblos partner. They were able to create their own networks. They were able to maximize speeds. And it's their program now. And they're working with others to provide the service, to enhance services, to do things of that nature. But it's almost, there's a program, it's called 638, where sovereign nations are able to take ownership of particular programs. This is empowering sovereign nations across the United States to be those leaders right now. And it's a program I support. It's a program I help lead, as you know, Chip. And it's closed the gap. And one of the reasons why is, look, 18% of people living within the sovereign nations were predominantly without any connection. And you compare that to those of us that are not living within reservations, the number's still high, but it's 4%. How can you create that kind of injustice? It shows that the program that was there before, as well-meaning as it was, and how much progress it made, that it still was not closing the gap. This program is. And so I'm really optimistic about what this means in eliminating the lack of connectivity in all sovereign nations and in all the tribes and with all the pueblos as well.
No, Commissioner Carr, in his remarks and his conversation with Angie right before you came on, talked about how a huge infusion of public funding combined with really the high peak of private investment, the funding combined, private, public, that if we can also bring in infusion of spectrum as a way to most efficiently, quickly deploy networks, is the recipe for how we can help close the digital divide and to do it as quickly and as cost effectively as possible. One opportunity before the FCC right now is on 12 gigahertz. You've been a champion on that issue. As the BEAD funding comes, if the FCC is timely in making a decision to allow two-way fixed high-powered wireless service, protecting against any interference, what would that mean? And is it time for the FCC to act?
One, it's time for the FCC to act. I believe that everyone will be hearing from Senator Blackburn, U.S. Senator from Tennessee, momentarily as well. So myself and Marcia actually joined a letter to the FCC showing our support and encouraging them to move. I believe that action in the 12 gigahertz space is going to be one of the important components to be able to help connect all of America, especially in those areas where you have a lot of rock, a lot of mountain. It's hard to get from here to there. There's concerns associated with permitting and easements and approvals and all the rest and the alphabet soup that goes along with it. This is going to be an important component to be able to get done. And then let me just say, Chip, what's today, the 5th of March?
It is. I think it's otherwise known as Super Tuesday.
So spectrum reauthorization expired on March 9th. I'm not trying to lose a week or gain a week. Last year. That needs to get done too. And by the way, that's one of the only revenue creating bills that the Commerce Committee in the Senate has before it to be able to get things done. We've got to do both. So I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic that the FCC will act. We should all encourage them to move in that particular space, but we should also not lose focus. on encouraging the Senate and the House to send to the president spectrum reauthorization policy right away. It seems to me that it's not the policy that's getting in the way of this. We've got to get it done. Now I'm going to go back to 12 gigahertz. What myself and Senator Blackburn shared with the FCC in that letter was follow the science. Technology is getting smarter. There's better ways to understand what's going to work, what's not going to work, where there's interference, where there's not, but also how to live together. And I think that also helps us in other bands. So I'm hopeful that there can be some strong rulemaking made in this particular area that will open the door for more spectrum use, better use, more effective and efficient use going forward as well, Chair.
Well, first, thank you for your leadership on 12. It's important. We have a great coalition. And as you know, they've also been trying to work with tribal leaders around the country for a set aside that would follow the precedent and the sovereign rights of the tribal nations as it applies to spectrum policy. So thank you for all your good work on 12. The Spectrum Auction Authority is a good segue into another very important discussion that we've had here today about the urgency of getting ACP extended and funded. Would you like to make news on any other path forward that would give us hope that ACP is going to happen, or that we're going to get a solution for ACP to be funded?
I'm optimistic that there will be a fix for the short-term funding with ACP. I believe Senator Welch and Senator Vance, their package looking at appropriations, it's getting more support. More members are talking about it. Appropriators are talking about it. They're looking at ways to get that funded. Colleagues in different corners are asking about the pay-fors as well. It's one of the other reasons why Spectrum needs to get done soon, because it would also help answer that question immediately. But nonetheless, unless the Congress wants to see millions of people across America lose internet, all the providers that are in this room or represented in this room have already had to send notices to their customers to say, this is all going away if Congress doesn't act. And there's a solution at hand, and a solution that's widely supported. So I believe that that's the answer. And in addition to that, while the Vance-Welch effort takes to the next year, we need to be thinking about after that. So I've been proud to be working with colleagues on a bipartisan, bicameral working group around ACP and USF to bring those programs together, to modernize those programs, to modernize the way that they're going to be funded, who they're going to help, how they're going to help, and all the rest, looking at the world that we're in. It's not 1996 any longer, but we can build off 1996 and ensuring that there's more ways to keep people connected as well. I believe that good policy reforms and modernization, Chip, helps secure more votes for the immediate funding, because it shows our colleagues that may have some reluctance in providing that immediate support for ACP. We're changing this program. We're modernizing it. We're updating it. We're looking forward. So there's a policy component in addition to the funding as well. And I believe it's a great partnership if both of those two can land together and move together. The secret is always, what's the vehicle? But I am very optimistic with the conversations that I've had, with the conversations that other members have engaged with me about, including leadership in this particular area. So it seems to be in the right place. We all need to help close this, though.
It's, one thing that I appreciate your leadership position on the committee, on the subcommittee, but it is the bipartisan commitment that you have with so many of your members. You mentioned Senator Blackburn. She's going to be following you in just a little bit. We're working with her on, how do we cross the railroad tracks to close the digital divide? How do we speed that, make it, one, more timely with shot clocks, and two, reasonable with actual cost standards. But we'll be talking to her about that effort. We appreciate your willingness to listen to us on that issue. Earlier today, we announced that INCOMPAS is starting a Center for AI, Public Policy and Responsibility. You've been a leader on AI. Just, I know that we didn't prepare questions or remarks on AI, But anything that you want to just kind of lay out as your principled approach, but also what you see as the tremendous benefits that could flow to states like New Mexico, Mexico, the heartland of the country, that could, in education, workforce, economic development,
Sure.
make a difference.
Well, the one thing, Chip, that I always have to remind myself is that AI is going to do some great stuff, but it can also do some bad things if it's allowed to. One of the focuses that I have on the subcommittee is looking at guardrails. What are those? What can we learn about what other nations are doing in this particular space, and what can we be doing better in the United States to ensure that ingenuity and innovation is going to prosper? But there's some guardrails here. And one example that I'll give you is in the medical space when it comes to AI. Well, in the United States, we don't have a great track record of diversity in clinical trials. When we're developing drugs in America, it depends on who's in the room and what audience they're going to target, and then what population they may be near in testing that particular drug. And I'm talking about the color of my skin, who my parents are, where they came from, and all the rest. It's all this composition about who gets the true benefit of these marvels and who doesn't. This ring that I had a stroke about 2 years ago. So this ring is one of those devices that checks to see if I'm sleeping. It says I doesn't or I don't, but it doesn't help me sleep. But it helps measure my blood pressure, my rate, if I'm sleeping or not. And I can report all of this to my physician as well. But originally, a lot of these devices would not get it right based on skin pigment. So if the inputs to the AI are lacking, then what are we going to get? AI is only as good as all that it's reviewing to be able to help make those decisions or present these ideas to us as well. That's what I'm suggesting. That what are the guardrails? How can we make changes that we know need addressing as well? And that's just one example, Chip. I also am proud to represent 2 national labs out of New Mexico. Within the Department of Energy and AI, the national labs have been doing this for a long time. It turns out they had to. They had the fastest computers. I would argue they still do in the United States. And we need to look to the labs as well, especially when we're working in the confines of government, to help us understand where that world should be as well. And so I applaud you and INCOMPAS for leaning into this space. Leader Schumer is committed. Todd Young, Martin Heinrich, Mike Rounds, the 4 leaders that are in the Senate that are helping to put this together, in addition to every committee. Because every committee also has jurisdiction in many areas of AI. And there's a lot of interest in this space, in addition to what's happening across America and around the world. So I'm very excited about what can come, but I'm also mindful that we need to be very thoughtful, whether it's through proprietary means or through government means, to ensure that we're able to help get things right and not create unnecessary loopholes.
I'm gonna wear 2 hats real quickly. I'm gonna wear the INCOMPAS hat and my Mississippi hat. What you're talking about, we're working with the University of Mississippi, who just established a narrative intelligence center. The University of Mississippi Medical Center is beginning its application for our comprehensive cancer center. We're working with all 4 of our research institutions in Mississippi: Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Southern Jackson State, to work with our federal research centers similar to your labs, of how do we bring the advanced AI applications in healthcare, in agriculture, in advanced manufacturing, in autonomy and autonomous vehicles. How do we use those not only to help, whether it's our DoD partners, our DOE, national labs, on how do we optimize our networks, broadband networks and electricity networks. I think Senator Wicker and you would make a great team of how do we bring those research hubs and the advanced AI applications, bring our HBCU partners into the process, and have these regional ways that we can make sure that the concerns that you have can be addressed. Our research can be done to help us lead internationally in our competitiveness, and that we have the guardrails that we need, but also the security and the privacy and the, and the competition. So I'd like to bring some of the Mississippi folks into your thoughts and
I think the world of
discussions.
Senator Wicker. I think Roger's a wonderful person. He's a great leader. In his leadership capacity on the Commerce Committee and out Armed Services, Roger's authored his own packages, his own solutions, some of which are ideas that coalesced the working group in ACP and USF as well. Some of those were authored by Roger. And so I think I should say Senator Roger Wicker. But he's a great leader. I look forward to working with him.
Well, is there anything you want to communicate to our members and the organizations and the coalitions that are working to connect every American, to sustain and maintain ACP, to bring tribal lands into the rich connectivity and spectrum opportunities? You have a great portfolio. Your leadership is respected across both aisles and on a bicameral basis. You and Mignon have something that's unique. Y'all are both public service commissioners, so you know how states work and operate. Any last words of guidance or wisdom to our member companies and to what we're trying to achieve in the best way to support policymakers?
Well, I can't say enough great things about Mignon. I think the world of the commissioner. And it was Mignon when she was the chair of one of the arms of the National Rural or the National, what were we called, Public Utility Commissioners. That doesn't make sense. What am I missing? There's an R out of there. Public Utility Commissioner, there's NARUC, right? Yeah. So anyhow, she was the chair of the group that would engage with members of the House and the Senate and the FCC, FERC, and others. And I was very proud to get onto that little group. But it was Mignon, then chair of that group, that introduced me first to a fellow named Jim Clyburn before I was running for Congress. And it was then Leader Clyburn that was one of the first folks to support me in my endeavor to become a member of the House. I think the world of her. She's brilliant. And whatever she advocates for, I know there's good in it, and there's a way to get things done. Look, when we're working on things, the example that I'll give is right now things are volatile in the Congress. There's debates over funding the federal government. Unnecessary barriers that get put in place of good work. That just wastes taxpayers' money. That's all we're doing. And we're hurting pensions, we're hurting all the rest with market volatility. So if members of Congress are willing to do that on funding the government, what do you think they'll do on affordability programs, on ACP? Even though they're broadly supported, I want us all to understand that, because there may be some areas where there's some disagreements with modernizing or looking at future funding and things of that nature. I get it. Everyone here has a role and responsibility. You know your business better than anyone. But if we don't work together to get this done, ACP could go away. And then what? All your budgets, all your revenue models, all the work that companies have done across America and understanding what the next few years look like, and your conversations with investors as well, what are you going to go tell them? What's going to happen to all that conduit in the ground? Maybe we can recycle it. Get pennies on the dollar. If there's copper in it. If it's glass tubes, I don't know what we're going to do. Maybe we can run water in it. I don't know. We've got to get this right. So I'm asking that we find ways to work together, that we understand how important these conversations are in landing funding for the next year, but also looking at this for the next 5 and 10 years. What will we be able to land together that ensures that programs like this exist and that more people across the country are going to hunger and demand for faster and faster and faster speeds, which means you're going to continue to upgrade and the revenue is going to be there to get that done. I think some good can happen, but it's one of those places we have to find a way to come together. So that's what I would ask is, let's land this thing.
We will always come to the table, and we appreciate how you always go to the table and how you bring people to the table. And we look forward to working with you on connecting every American, every tribe, and every corner of the country. So I couldn't thank you more.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your leadership, brother.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.